Good morning, everybody. This is Martin John, and we are here to talk about the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching is an ancient text written in the 6th century BC, and presumably by a guy Lao Tzu, and it is filled with all sorts of enigmatic wisdom and advice or perspectives that we can take on to what I like to refer to as live a reasonable life, or live a more reasonable life. Living a more reasonable life really, in my terms, means living a life in which we're not asking things to change for us. If things are as they are. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't do anything about that, right? We allow people to be who they are and do what they do. We allow animals and the weather and the earth and the planets to do what they do. But we don't ask or force them to change. We pivot. We do the things that need to be done that come to us. We utilize our inspiration. We utilize stillness so that we can hear what it is we can do. So often we like to fill the space. And the more space we fill in our life, the more we are closed off to inspiration. There's a quote that I came across years ago, which is leave room for inspiration. You can't make more space in your life than is already there. And for every moment that you fill certain amount of space, that's space that can't be injected with inspiration. You know, I've found in my life when I overeat, when I drink too much coffee, when I drank too much when I was drinking, when I fill my life with too many projects, when I fill my life with too much ambition, when I fill my life with too much of anything, I'm filling my mind, I'm filling my voice, I'm filling my heart, I'm filling it all. And there's just no room. And I think about that when I say, you know, we let the world be what it is, but at the same time, we be who we are. And the only way that we can be who we are is to have enough space to be inspired to be who we are. It's too often that we can fill ourselves up with worry and doubt and fear and excitement and food and all of these things, and not have our minds open enough to receive. Yesterday, many of you know I bought a house and I'm slowly fixing it up as I live in it and all this kind of stuff. And there's all of this stuff that has to just get sorted because this house had gone through a number of iterations. And a lot of those iterations were done by different people. And they were done in different ways. They were done to cut corners. They were done to make it easy. And we do that sometimes, right? We just say, oh, let me just get through this. I can get this document, whether it's a job or a degree or something. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to get that thing that I'm looking for. I'm going to focus on the outcome rather than the journey. And I'm just going to get the journey done as quick as possible, or get the journey done with as little resistance as possible, right? With as little, I don't even know what the word would be, but I'm going to do a thing. And the only thing that matters is the outcome. So the only thing that matters is what it looks like in the end. Is the surface. The guy who owned the house before me, a good friend of mine, he wasn't interested in foundational things. He wasn't interested in things that are under the surface. He was interested in the surface. And so there's all of these things under the surface that are absolutely in need of repair or in need of attention. Yesterday, I probably pulled maybe 50 or 100 feet of wire out of the house that was unnecessary. And then, I was just I was just looking at one room. So I was looking at one room, and I was looking to remove a switch and do a couple things. And as I was going through the wiring with my neighbor, I just realized that there's all of these places where it's like, we're going to run the electricity across the room and back rather than splicing the electricity in the front of the room, and then running it both directions. So there's all these extra wires, all this extra stuff. And because there's extra stuff, it gets confusing because you don't know what's going and what's coming and what's up and what's down. And so we simplified everything and made it so that you can track all of the wires rather than go out and come back. And you don't know, because if you just look at a wire, you don't know what direction the energy is going. And that was just because, now they did that, and I understand that they did that for whatever reason they did. But the way that they put the conduit and all of that, that's where they're cutting corners, and they're just adding on. They're just like, okay, well, I want a light here. And rather than looking at what's existing and going through and figuring it out, they just threw a light in and took whatever they got, and the neutrals go back to the box. And there's a lot of stuff about electricity that I'm not going to talk about, but there's all of these things where it's just like, oftentimes in our life, when we're focused on the outcome, we just want a light. Well, it's like, well, let's figure out why a light wasn't put there in the first place. And okay, well, maybe they just didn't want one there. And let's figure out where to put that light and why and what is the best breaker to put that light on. It's so important for us to be able to get to the foundation of something and understand. I want to understand my house from the ground up because it's an entity too. It is Tao as well. And when we do things, when we're aligned with Tao, we can allow those things to be what they are. I can allow my house to be what my house is. And then I can look at it without judgment, and I can say, hey, what is it you're doing? And what is this relationship that we're investing in together? I can have a relationship with my house, and I can go in and I can pull this wire out. And as I do that, as I get rid of all of this excess stuff, as I get rid of all this excess weight, as I get rid of all of this excess wiring. I remember when I first bought the house, one of the things I did was go around and pull all of the old cable out. Because there was cable upon cable. I had to have pulled hundreds of feet of cable that snaked through the house and around the house outside. And that was just cut at the end and then just left to hang there. And it's interesting when you do that, when you do something for a house, when you do something for a person, when you do something for your car, when you just clean something up. You see, this is unnecessary weight. This is unnecessary weight in my life. This is unnecessary weight on my body. This is unnecessary weight in my mind. All of these things are so important to recognize because we don't know where and how it all builds up. It builds up at some point, and then all of a sudden we open our eyes and we're like, "Oh my God, where did this come from?" There were 6 or 7 cables that ran along the side of my house that were all clipped at the end, and I'm like, "What is the purpose of this? What is the purpose of keeping this here and not spending 5 minutes to just collect it?" And then I went into my house, and there's wires, there's cables going into different rooms and stuff like that. And I don't have cables, so I don't care to have cables running through my house. But that was a big part of it. It was like, get rid of all of this excess. Get rid of all of this stuff that has no more value in the house. And as I'm removing walls and as I'm removing the ceilings and stuff, I'm coming across more cable. And it's like, okay, well, snip it back, pull it out. Because that opens up room for inspiration, not only for myself, but for my house. And when we look at our lives, we look at different things in our lives, whether it's our relationships, whether it's our bodies, whether it's our minds, because those are two different things. We could have excess weight in our minds and be perfectly, fit in our bodies. And we can be perfectly fit in our minds and have extra weight on our bodies. And it's important to understand that extra weight just comes sometimes because it starts somewhere. It starts with us holding on to something that we're not really willing to get rid of yet. And when we can get rid of it, we open ourselves up to understanding ourselves better. JK, how are you doing?
How are you?
I'm well. How was the snow?
Good. I got quite a bit. Lucky I didn't have to go anywhere, so that was a positive thing for me because last time I got stuck when we had this much snow.
You got stuck in the car, or you got stuck where you were?
I got stuck at my job that
Oh, yeah.
and because it was so crazy on the roads that I was like, I'm just going to wait until there's nobody on the road. And my car was not equipped to drive in this weather. So, I got on the road and I realized I got out of the job. I walked into the car and I tried to back up and I couldn't get out of the spot. So I said, well, I was far enough away that I couldn't walk home and wound up going and started walking because I needed a place to stay for the night. And so I started walking and I remember this guy kind of drove beside me. He's like, do you want to ride? I'm not really one to like just jump in the car with strangers, but the shoes I had on were not equipped for the snow.
Yeah.
I don't even think I had a good jacket on. So I was like, okay. I was like, that dude's not going that fast. I said, I could always jump out. I said, if he tries anything funny, because it was going that slow. You couldn't go fast.
Right.
Turned
Yeah.
out it was somebody who worked with an old boss at a company that I worked for, like right down the road. And we got to talking and he dropped me off at the only hotel that was there. And they have tons of hotels there because there were a lot of offices there. And the only hotel that had a room. And it wound up being this, like, it was just a hotel that was just, it was fabulous. It was just a fabulous hotel and spa. And I had a great night. I had a great time. I met a whole bunch of people and had myself dinner and all that stuff. And it was a fun time. But anyway, that was my experience in the snow the
Yeah,
last time.
that sounds like, like it's funny, like you're like, it's so good I didn't have to go anywhere and da 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 da. But that the time that you did have to go somewhere, it actually turned out pretty good.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it wasn't terrible. It was great. It was a beautiful. I mean, it was one of those hotels I would never stay in because they're just too expensive.
Right.
But
But
wound
you
up
had no
not having
choice.
to pay the full price because they were doing like this thing because people were stuck,
Yeah, yeah.
So it was like it
Nice.
was wonderful. So
Nice. Well,
yeah.
that's
So this
good.
time though, I stayed home, which I'm okay with too. I like home.
Of course, yeah. And I think that, because I was talking about, leaving room for inspiration, that idea of like, oh, well, you don't have to presuppose what's going to happen. You don't have to. And you were inspired to wait until there was nobody else on the road.
Yes.
And that really dictated your experience. Like,
Oh yeah.
you made a choice. And that choice was the worst choice you could have made at one point,
Yes.
in one moment. And just surrendering to that, because that's the nice thing. When you're literally stranded in the winter, in the snow, that is a time where you can't have other options. You have very, like, if you had another option, you may have not taken that ride.
Yeah.
And that's the wonderful thing about Tao. When you can truly surrender to where life is taking you, you will find the magic in every place you go.
Yep.
And it's very rare that we can truly surrender to things. And I think that, all those feel good movies and all those feel good stories on the news and stuff, those come, I feel, when people have to truly surrender and they have to open up to, well, what is here? And I'm not in control. Mm-hmm. And the thing is your life could be full of that much magic at every moment.
Yes.
But we're not forced to give up control very often.
Mm-hmm.
But
I agree.
And it's, and all of those magic moments happen because we get to give up control, one. But then the other thing is that because it is such an outwardly awesome event, whether it's the snow, fires, other things like that, And so it builds up all of this emotion. But maybe it's just a Tuesday and you give up control and magic happens and it's exciting for you and it's nice for you to experience that magic. But it doesn't translate the same way that your story of like the spa and the snow and the ups and the downs. And, the ups and the downs are fine, but they're the ones that create the contrast that make the magic seem magical. Where it's like life is magic. It just doesn't always seem that way because we're always trying to control it.
Yeah, we're not leaving space for the inspiration, as you said earlier. I think we're filling ourselves up with thoughts,
Right.
with food, with activity. And
Yep.
I agree totally, because then I couldn't have imagined, my life was not magic in my head at the time.
Right.
And I actually haven't thought about that in a really long time, but um, how magical the experience was. And I was like, yeah, that was such good luck, And I think about how I am today. And I can see that kind of magic just on my morning walk a lot of the time,
Right.
And
Well,
it's
that's the
really
thing.
amazing because I'm like, oh man, I missed out on a lot of magic, but hey, I'll do it now.
But
See what happens.
but here we are. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
see. Well, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Well, I'm glad you're out in the snow.
Yep.
The snow is nice.
It
When
is.
I as someone was raised in snow with snowy conditions in the winters at least. I always there was always there were days when it didn't snow and it was just colder. It was colder and it was in the sun, when the sun was out in the winter, it was the coldest days.
Yes, yeah.
And but then it would snow. And when it snowed, it was always it always just seemed so warm. Because you were in the winter, and it could only snow between like 20 and 34 or 32, right? So it's really it is warmer because it gets under that temperature, and then everything starts to go away. Like all the clouds go away, and then the sun comes out, and then it just makes those sunny days of just whipping wind and snow, or it doesn't snow, but it's like the cold just drops in those days.
Yeah, it looks beautiful, like when you're looking out the window, and it's one of those real clear days that it's just picture
You can see
perfect, and then all of a
forever.
sudden you go outside and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, like that
And your
just
teeth
whips
are
through your
chattering.
bones.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. But
And
then
in New York,
Go on.
It snowed a lot in New York. It snowed a lot, and
Yeah.
I remember you always say about being a kid and remembering snow being on the ground. I remember that too. Like it was always snowing then.
Yeah.
Um, Not as much. Anyway, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, no, no. And but when you go out in the snow and it's different. It's quiet. And
Hmm.
it's literally like a blanket. And
Yep.
it's like everything's quiet. Nothing's moving around, and then you're walking through it. And it's like there's just something so comforting about those moments, especially in the morning, when the snow is lighter than the sky and you're walking and it's still dark out, but you can see. And it's such a beautiful experience.
Yeah,
I
it's like it's a
remember.
highlight running through.
Right. And I remember, being a kid, and just even being like, there were times as an adult where I would go out to shovel, and nobody would be out yet. And it would still be dark. And it would be that quiet. And then you just step out into a city and you look around and there's not even a single set of footprints in the snow yet. And it's like,
Yeah.
there's something about that moment of just like nobody's passed here. And then you start to shovel and the sound of the shovel on sidewalk under a pack of snow. It's like, I don't know. There is beautiful stuff about those moments of just awareness, of just being aware of the difference. Like I remember being a kid, when it would rain, you'd smell it.
Yeah, yeah.
And be like, oh yeah, it's going to rain. And it's like just being open to being aware of what's going on around you. And then just being like, no big deal. It's going to snow. It's going to rain. It's
Hmm.
like, oh, that's, and there was a smell of snow even, like this. Oh, that's all
Yeah.
so, just being aware of all of that stuff is so beautiful.
It's beautiful. I love it. And then usually we'll see if I get over there today. I haven't yet, but when I went the last time it snowed and I was in the woods and just those untouched parts, even still days later,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
beautiful. And then I was standing underneath a tree and the wind kind of blew and it starts snowing all over again, just for me, just in that spot.
Just for you.
Just for
It's,
me, it was snowing in that
that's so
moment. And it
beautiful.
was really awesome. I was sitting there
Yeah.
looking up and I was like, how cool is this?
That's, and if your mind was somewhere else, you had to go home, you had to get something done, you just wouldn't notice it. If it was just like, I'm going out to walk, I'm going to be back in an hour and a half. Okay, I'm going to do my 5-mile walk and then I'm going to be done. And if that was it, that was the whole purpose, then you might not be aware. You might not be aware to stand present enough to see that it's snowing for you.
Yeah. And if the thing is if I didn't have that, where my sole purpose was to go out for my 5-mile walk at first,
Mm-hmm.
I would have never ended up realizing that it's not about the 5-mile walk at all.
Right.
So it was perfect in itself because I did. That's exactly why I went out every morning,
Right.
And then it was funny because the conditions, like now I go out, doesn't matter. It's snowing, it's raining, it's hot, it's cold. I go.
Yeah.
Um, and before it was a process to get me out when it was
Right.
a condition that was not in my head favorable.
Right.
Now I don't mind whether it's raining or sometimes I go out and it starts pouring on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just laugh the same way it was snowing for me. I'm like, oh, it's
That's right.
raining,
Here it goes. Yep.
here we go. And eventually I make it back home.
Yep.
And it's fine. You're just a little soggy. That's okay.
That's right. That's right.
But
All right.
mhm,
You have a
yeah.
number.
Yes. 46.
Knowing when to stop.
Mhm.
When Tao is followed, food, shelter, and water are prioritized. Going counter to Tao, war, excess, and hoarding are praised. He who believes there isn't enough is cursed to never have enough. He who believes he must acquire will acquire nothing that lasts. There's no greater waste of time or energy than being discontent. Therefore, the master knows what is enough and is content to stop there.
So I picked that one this morning earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And funny enough with it, that you happen to be talking about some of that as well.
Yeah.
And I was last night I was getting, and I'm still kind of coming down from I mean, it was 3-4 weeks that I was gone at least once a week, traveling.
Yeah.
It was a lot. And when I came back, like my body went through a process of decompressing a lot of that stuff. And I think I'm finally starting to settle back in. And yesterday was odd because I was finding like things were kind of a little, just odd at work. Crap was kind of happening, and I'm looking around. I'm like, "What?" I was like, "You got to take a break tonight." I said, you got to settle back in." And as I did, I had to grab one thing off of the shelf, and a box fell on my hand. And I swear I'd probably get it checked out, maybe, I don't know. And I'm looking at it. I was like, I know, I was just about to go to bed, universe. I was like, I was just about to stop. I know, I get it. Because it's my middle finger. So it was of all things. So it's like, and it was kind of crooked. And I was like, ah, shit. And I wrapped it up and I wound up going to bed. And I was like, but I knew I was supposed to.
It's wonderful. Someone asked me yesterday, you dropped, so you can come back up. Someone asked me yesterday about praying. And my response was, well, I pray a lot, like a real lot. Because even like what you just described to me, like that idea of like, no, but I was going to go to bed. Like you, that's a prayer.
Yeah.
Like you're in conversation with God or Tao or whatever. You're in conversation with that which you live in collaboration with. And it's like, I would never come out and say and make the statement, I pray. But when someone asks you, do you pray? And they kind of lay out what they believe prayer is. Yes, it's undeniable that I pray. I'm praying all the time because I realize I am living in a collaboration with some thing, with myself, with God, with Tao, with whatever, with
the God that lives within you and all that. Yeah.
Right. And within everybody, like that I am connected to everything and that I am living not for myself. Like I'm having experiences for myself, but I'm living for this bigger thing and as part of this bigger thing. Trust me, the skin cells in your feet don't think they're making the decisions that they're making for you. They believe they're making their decisions for themselves, and they're reacting because of the cells around them and and the other cells that are intertwined and entangled with them and stuff. They think they're autonomous, just like we do. But if the cells in our skin decide to do what they want to do, that creates cancer in the system. And so it's important that we understand that we're not, although we're autonomous out here in the world and we're sovereign to do what we want to do. And this goes back to leaving room for inspiration. Don't fill yourself with ego, telling yourself that you know what to do, but you're living in collaboration. And that collaboration does will at some point, like it did for you yesterday, move you to pray. Move you to have a conversation and be grateful for that conversation.
And I do all the time too. I talk to a lot of, I talk to the animals and I talk to people probably think I'm a Looney Tune walking around, but that's what I do, and but that is, like you're saying, talking to you.
Yep,
it is
absolutely.
A form of prayer, right?
And even this is a form of prayer. This is me talking to me because, yes, I am talking to you, but what I'm hearing is me What you're
Yeah.
hearing is you, and how I decide to process and respond to that is still me. Now, if I can stay in a state of prayer, of understanding that this is me talking to, this is what namaste is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I recognize the universal soul within you, and that soul is being recognized by my soul, and we're one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And just by, we can just utilize hello as that, right? A lot of people want to say namaste, but it's like, well, that's what hello says. If your mind is there,
Yeah. Same with an
go on.
unspoken word, right?
Right.
An unspoken
Absolutely.
word would do the same. A nod, a smile, all that
Right.
does the same thing if you're open to connecting.
That's right. And you don't
Otherwise,
have
it
to.
doesn't say much at all.
Right. And I think a lot of times when people like do the namaste thing, and namaste is fine. I love it. It's great. But it also creates an other, right? Like you're engaging in a conversation, and you're trying to prove, you're trying to put yourself out there. Like, it could be that. Now, if it's just naturally what you say to everybody,
Yeah.
but if you decide to say it to one person and not another person and all of these things, or if you are inspired to say it, like at the yoga studio that I go to, like when people come, they say Sat Nam.
Mm-hmm.
And that's beautiful. Love it. I don't utilize the term Sat Nam.
Yeah.
When someone tells me Sat Nam, I go, hey, because it does mean the same to me. And and I understand that the yoga studio is called Sat Nam. And so, and Sat Nam is a greeting and all of these things, but that's the same thing as namaste. And, that's their job and whatever, all of that. But it's wonderful to just be in that moment, like there's no, and I love this, like there's no greater waste of time or energy than being discontent.
Mm-hmm.
And being discontent can cause us to want to be something else, to want to be seen as something else, but then that comes to understanding that, like I am constantly in communication with God, constantly in communication with Tao. And when I can leave enough room for God or Tao in my life, they'll show up. And then I'll be able to be inspired by them rather than closing off that inspiration because it's making me think that I need to change, right? Or I want to do something else, or I'm not going to be pacified because that inspiration is asking me, why are you eating this fifth Oreo cookie? It's like, oh, damn it. Like, and that's why we have to meet it with grace. And well, I'm going to do it until I don't. And it's okay. But you'll more rapidly find the space to be inspired if you don't meet that with judgment.
I agree. I totally agree. And that's, from traveling and all this stuff, and I had yesterday, it was interesting because something happened, and I hate to use I was being blamed, but basically it was being justified that, what the task was that was running, that was obviously they just did a software upgrade and something changed. And I brought it to the attention because it caused an issue for the application I work on. And the response I got back, well, there's a message that says it's a long running task. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. I said, that's irrelevant. And it was funny in my head because I was going to write back something to be like, this is not helpful and be a bitch. And I was like, I think I said it to you. I was like, yeah, today saying nothing is always going to be a good thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, you just need to shut up and just, put the information. Don't add any of your extra stuff that's not going to be helpful back, right? Because then I'm behaving the same manner. And I
Right.
just laughed. I'm looking at my computer and I'm laughing at myself. And I
Yeah.
wrote the stuff back, but I was a little bit nervous about it because it did cause a pretty big issue. And I was
Yeah.
like, shit, did I do it?
Right.
Was
Yeah.
I not paying attention to what was happening? And it all, it all pans out.
Right. And
But
ultimately, even if it was your fault, let's say this was something that you did or didn't do or whatever, that's just like your experience, right? Just like blaming and
Mhm.
being the one to blame is an experience that you're having, right?
Yeah.
You're like, you didn't do something that was wrong. You did something so you can have the experience of having done something wrong, right? Like, and then look at that.
And I did. And the
Right.
looking in the part was the judgment. I was like, why are you either way, even if you did something wrong, right?
Hmm.
Why are you judging that as wrong right now?
Right. 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 Because this is like, let's, because that's
Like
going to
you didn't do
slow
it
you
on
down.
purpose. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't something I did purpose. I was doing my job. That's what I had to do. And even if I wasn't paying attention, well, lesson learned, pay attention a little harder next time,
Yeah. Or whatever it
and
is.
that's
Yeah.
it. And who cares at the end of the day?
And
It doesn't matter.
this might get repaired and make the whole product better.
Maybe.
You
Yeah.
know,
I
so
mean,
so you don't, but of course you don't want to tell your CEO that or anything like that. Like that's not something that you. But you, if you judge this and then start to worry and fret, everything that you hear is going to be an attack, and you're
exactly. And
not
that's what
going to be
happened.
open. Yeah, and you're not going to be open to to be inspired to do anything more. And sometimes you just got to step away so that you can refocus.
And it was so funny because the minute I was blaming myself, all of a sudden, what I heard when I was, because I had to tell, my boss and blah, blah, because it had a significant impact.
Yeah.
And I'm telling him, but in my head, I like, you could feel like you get a little sweaty. You're like, "Ooh,"
Yeah. Yeah.
did I do this? And I'm telling him, and I'm blaming myself in my head. And all
Hmm.
of a sudden, I hear him go, "Well, we have to be more careful." And that's when I looked at. I'm like, because we weren't seeing each other, we weren't on video. And I look at my screen, and I'm like, "This is hilarious." And then you know what? I shifted. And my
Yeah.
mindset, I was like, this is not my fault. You're being stupid. I was like, just go about your
Right.
day. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden goes, oh, I said something else. And all of a sudden the whole story changed.
Yeah.
And it was, it was magical.
And
It's
that's the
almost like,
thing. It's so crazy how one little shift of your mind can change. And then, like I've heard so many people after I work with them, there's like, they changed so much. They are acting differently. And I'm like, no,
mm-mm,
they're probably not acting differently, but they said this. And I was like, no, 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 you heard that.
that's what you heard. Yeah.
You heard, they may have said the same thing before and now, and you're just hearing it differently. But no, they used the words. And I was like, stop it. Just accept the fact that why would you working with me for 3 weeks cause them to change overnight?
Yeah.
It's
There's
like,
no
it's
way.
not, it's you. You're the one changing. You're the one growing. They've never been arrogant. They've never been what you've called them. And you do whatever you want to, whatever word you blame everybody for being. So many times people
Yeah.
are like, oh, they're on, blah, 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 they're this, they're that. And
Hmm.
it's like, okay, well, like, where's that really coming from?
Hmm.
And then when you start to see the ways that you are and let those things go, that starts to fall by the wayside. And that's therefore the master knows when what is enough and is content to stop there. And that's even like when it's enough for us to be arrogant, when it's enough for us to place blame, when we're done placing blame stops getting placed on us. When we're
Yep.
done being arrogant, we interact with people that no longer need to utilize arrogance to get their point across.
And then you start seeing the magic again. And
That's right.
it's, the magic slips away really quick.
Yeah.
It
There's
starts
not.
just becoming cold. It's not a beautiful, clear day with the wind whipping away. It
Right.
becomes
Yeah.
the language completely changed. And we went on Sunday to the park with my son, and I saw a little girl, and she was with her mom, and the wind was really, I mean, I don't know. I don't know compared to Chicago, but the wind was whipping. And there's this art museum we go to sometimes because it's always windier. Like, I don't know if it's just the open space that they have or what it is, but it's always windier there. So we brought a kite and we were flying the kite, and this little girl was doing what you said you did. Just putting her arms out and letting the wind take her and plop her on the ground. And it
Yeah.
was the cutest thing because I was looking, I was like, oh, and I was thinking of you. I was like seeing, a little Martin there just doing the same thing. And then I was thinking about it again yesterday because you guys were talking about how we pass things down, how an idea starts with one person. I was like, kids have been doing that, like kind of passing it down in the greater collective thought.
Yeah.
Like kids just do it. And it
Yeah.
was really, I don't know, it was cool. It was a cool thing to
I
think of.
I've always loved being put in my place by nature in some way,
Yeah.
like going on hikes that are just a little further, because
Yep.
then you get a little scared.
Yeah.
Getting wind, experiencing cold, experiencing heat, not just turning the AC on just as soon as it gets a little warm, not turning the heat on, like leaving the windows open just a little longer, just to feel it. Because it's like, there's something in that. There's something in
Mhm.
feeling. That's what we're here to do. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And yeah, have a wonderful day. Good. Enjoy
You
the
too.
snow.
I will.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, so number 46, JK, thank you so much. Knowing when to stop. I'm going to go ahead and read it again. For those of you who may have missed it. When Tao is followed, shelter, food, and water are prioritized. Going counter to Tao, war, excess, and hoarding are praised. He who believes there isn't enough is cursed to never have enough. He who believes he must acquire will acquire nothing that lasts. There is no greater waste of time or energy than being discontent. Therefore, the master knows what is enough and is content to stop there. It's so good that, like all of this stuff that we were talking about really kind of fits into this in one way or another. When we talk about shelter, food, and water, it's like, nomadic peoples and hunter-gatherers, primarily hunter-gatherers, had so much time on their hands because they knew how to trap, and they would just kind of set their traps, walk back, collect their traps, do that a couple times a day, and life is easy. There's so much time on their hands. They didn't have to collect excess because anything excess would go bad. So you spend your day collecting your food for the day, and that leaves room in your life to be inspired. Just like I was talking about at the beginning, this idea of like leave room for inspiration. When you have that time, because you have food, you have shelter, you have water, there's no reason to worry about anything else. Now we're content. And now we can be inspired by Tao, be inspired by God to be who we are in this moment. And then it says, he who believes there isn't enough is cursed to never have enough. He who believes he must acquire will acquire nothing that lasts. It's this idea of being content, this idea of being like, hey, I have everything I need. Now, what is needed of me? And I think that's the being open to inspiration. I'm grateful to have food, shelter, water. And I think when I mentioned like prayer, it's like I am so grateful for those things, because with those things, I can literally do nothing for the rest of the day because I have enough food for today. And because I can literally do nothing, that can open me up to inspiration, and that inspiration will have me do something. And I don't have to worry that I have nothing to do, because the thing that I'm here to do is be inspired and to really be me in this world today, here, right now. And even if I have nothing to do, I don't have to be discontent about that. I can be open, because if I'm discontent about it, I start bringing in judgment. I start bringing in doubt. I start bringing in shame. I start bringing in all of these other things. And all of those things end up filling space. And there's no room for inspiration. That's why we talk about mindfulness. We talk about meditation. We talk about prayer. We talk about all of these things, because that leaves room to be inspired. There's no greater waste of time or energy than being discontent. Therefore, the master knows what is enough. The master knows what is enough and is content to stop there. You have enough food, shelter, water. Oh, good. Like, wow, I got it all. That's so great. Now I sit here, and now that I have that for today, what can I do for you? Asking God or the universe. And that's where the prayer, that's where the meditation, that's where the stillness comes in. Now, you might have things to do. You might have work and all of these sorts of things, and that's fine too. But being discontent about it fills you more, right? It fills more space. It fills more head space. It fills more heart space. It just fills. And then eventually you run out of room, run out of places to be inspired. Start carrying all that excess. Thank you so much for joining me. It's Thursday, and so I start a little early. I end a little early on Thursdays. JK, thanks for joining me. For those of you who wait for me at 6 a.m., thanks. Sorry, I start early on Thursdays, but I have a call, just before 7 o'clock. So I try and get in as much as I can before I log out. But I appreciate you guys so much. That's the reminder of my call. Thank you guys so much once again. I'm Martin John. This is Tao of the Day, and we talk about the Tao Te Ching. Last year, I published my translation of the Tao Te Ching. You can find that on my website. You can find links to all the things that I do in my profile here on Noom Vibe. And you can find me here weekdays, 6 a.m., to talk about the Tao. I love you guys so much. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your interest in Tao. And until next time, keep recovering yourself.